the White House announced it is pursuing a revocation of security clearances for John Brennan and other former intelligence officials.
Not only is the president looking to take away Brennan's security clearance, he's also looking into the clearances of Comey, Clapper, Hayden, Rice, and McCabe.
President Trump is threatening Iran with historic consequences.
When people start to respond the way the Iranians are responding, it's because they're scared.
Now that we're getting a look at the FISA warrant, we're getting a clearer picture of...
You don't open up an investigation into a campaign, okay, and then turn around and get a FISA warrant.
President Trump's pick to lead the Veterans Affairs Department is starting his first full day on the job today. The Senate overwhelmingly confirming Robert Wilkie with an 86-9 vote.
President Trump welcomed to the White House a shining array of U.S. manufacturers, business owners, and ag producers.
We're here today to celebrate the greatest products in the world. When I was growing up, I'd see Made in America all over the place.
Well, kind of a great start to this July 24th. It's a Tuesday, live up here on the mezzanine level. Welcome to Fox and Friends. Sunny here in the Studio F.
That's right. Good morning to you at home. Thank you so much for joining us. And Todd, thanks for being here, filling in for Brian this morning.
Always great to be here. Thanks for having me. It was fun yesterday. Hopefully we'll have some more fun today.
That's right.
We have 3 hours, and it starts right now with this. The White House threatening to yank security clearances from 6 Obama-era intel officials.
There is now concern that they used it for their political and financial benefit.
Griff Jenkins is in Washington, where reaction, as you might imagine, pouring in from both sides of the aisle. Griff, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Look, whether you see this as an abuse of power or as politicizing security clearances, it's important to look at how and why this began. Former CIA Director John Brennan, who now earns a living as a national security analyst for another TV network, accused the president brazenly of committing, quote, nothing short of treason in Helsinki. That prompted Senator Rand Paul to accuse Brennan of monetizing his clearance, and he's spoken to the president about it.
Had a great conversation with the president. I've been very concerned about John Brennan. Anyone who's calling basically the president treasonous, which would require the death penalty, is someone that is over the top and not showing the proper judgment to still have access to classified information.
Now we know the White House is in fact considering removing clearances not only from Brennan, but from other former Obama officials like FBI Director James Comey, Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, DNI Director James Clapper, NSC Advisor Susan Rice, and CIA Director Michael Hayden. Now Brennan says he hasn't made a penny off his clearance, and Comey and McCabe reportedly no longer actually have clearances, while Clapper said this.
I think this is just a very, very petty thing to do, and that's about all I'll say about it.
And as all this begins, we should make it very clear that clearances do not automatically terminate when officials leave that position, but the post-position clearance does not also give them automatic access to current intelligence. Todd, Ainsley, Steve?
All right. Thank you very much, Griff, reporting live from our nation's capital. So, there's been reaction from both sides. Some people go, yeah, he ought to do that because they did weaponize their intel. But then at the same time, when asked yesterday about doesn't this violate those people's First Amendment rights, Sarah Huckabee Sanders said the president feels as if they are politicizing and, in some cases, monetizing their clearance, and they don't like that. And keep in mind as well, the president has the power to grant or revoke clearances.
That's right. He has the power to do that because these individuals, they were working for the government, and then they go on to write books. They go on to be on television networks and give their expertise and give their advice. And the president is saying they're giving bad advice, making baseless accusations of improper contact or content with Russia.
As you might imagine, Democrats up in arms over this, including their leader, Nancy Pelosi. She is really slamming the idea to revoke security clearances. Here's what she said upon hearing the news.
This is so extraordinary. The last thing you want in intelligence is partisanship. And we were able to avoid that for such a long time.
Not really. When James Comey, who was former intelligence agent, said that everyone should vote Democrats this fall. He just tweeted that.
He's been doing a lot of that lately, and he's taken a lot of heat on Twitter for it. So she says, you shouldn't be partisan in a situation like that. And yet, you look back in the archives of video, there's a lot of that going on. Watch this.
It's almost a badge of honor when the president sees fit to go after individual private citizens.
I think Mr. Trump is not sophisticated enough, unfortunately, to deal with these foreign leaders in a manner that is going to protect U.S. national security interests.
I don't think he's medically unfit to be president. I think he's morally unfit to be president.
There is a bit of autocrat envy in terms of the president's attitude towards the president of the Russian Federation.
He's taken a series of steps that had Vladimir Putin dictated them, he couldn't have mirrored more effectively. What his motivations are, I think, is a legitimate question.
Look, ultimately, anybody in a position of power who weaponized intel to try to destroy Donald Trump when he was running for president or in some way afterwards, that person should get in some sort of trouble. And Jim Jordan, the congressman from the great state of Ohio, says, look, it all comes back to Russia and spying on the campaign. And many of these same people we're talking about this morning were involved in that. Watch.
Brennan leaked the information to Harry Reid. Rice goes on TV after Benghazi and lies on 5 different networks about the cause, the catalyst of the attack in Benghazi. Clapper lied under oath. Comey leaked information through a friend to create momentum for a special counsel. McCabe lied 3 times under oath, faces a criminal referral. And we know Peter Strzok isn't telling the truth because he couldn't even admit that there was bias in his statements in his text messages to Lisa Page in the committee hearing 2 weeks ago. So the president is fighting back just like he should. And what we also know is this past weekend, everything that we saw in this FISA application confirms what we've all been saying for 7 months.
So will the president pull their security clearances? He's considering right now. Stay tuned.
Well, it turns out, we were talking yesterday about the president being criticized on all these networks about his comments to Iran. The Iranian dictator said, or leader said one thing, our president fought back. But it is working. His strategy is working. We are learning this morning that there are satellite images of North Korea, and they are dismantling its main missile engine test site. So signs of North Korea fulfilling promises that were made to the United States.
Yeah, look, this is no time to spike the football. This progress with regard to North Korea is not going to be fast. But we are looking for a major starting off point, and this very well could be that. Switch gears now to Iran with regard to the rhetoric that's been coming out of the left saying, the president, he's going to start a war. He's being too incendiary with regard to Iran. Rush Limbaugh had a pretty interesting take on Iran as it relates to Russia and those same liberals who criticize the president for not being tough enough with Russia. Here's what he had to say.
The drive-bys are now obsessed, for the moment, with Trump and his all-caps tweets to President Rouhani of Iran, who is continuing to shout death through America here and death through America there. And Trump's had it. We don't laud over anybody. We just be who we are. There's no shame in becoming a superpower. Iran, good bet, is Russia's #1 client state at this point in time. Pretty hard to reconcile Trump's tweets with the claim that Trump is Putin's puppet. Trump is aggressively challenging Russia's puppet client state in the Middle East. How in the world is this acting as Putin's puppet?
Exactly. And so when you get in the Wayback Machine and you look at how those on the political left just exploded when the president of the United States engaged Kim Jong-un the way he did on Twitter and stuff like that, calling him Little Rocket Man, because he did love the song Rocket Man by Elton John that he heard a lot on his jet flying all over the place. What did the political left say? He's going to get us into a shooting war. Fast forward to what he's doing right now with, and there, look at that. There's one of those handshakes that was 6 weeks ago. And that's why this first step of dismantling this launch site is, people have been going, it's taken too long. This is a good faith effort on the part of North Korea that they are doing something. Fast forward to today, and now people are going, he's tweeting in all caps. He's going to get us in big trouble. Sound familiar?
I think the majority of the country likes it. I really do. I think that they like his tough stance, that he's not a politician. He's not afraid to tell people how he feels. He's tough, and I think most people like it.
It's his business plan. This is how he gets their attention. Once he has their attention, then he goes, you don't like that? All right,
Think
then
most
let's sit
people-
down and talk about it.
Don't you think most people look at the big picture, though?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's better to sit down with Putin. It's better to sit down with Kim Jong-un, especially when the United States and Russia control 90% of the nuclear weapons.
Yep.
We need to sit down with them. We don't want to be enemies.
And to your point, when we go to diners, when you speak with people in the South, and when you went to South Carolina, you're doing Deuce on the Loose, you speak to these individuals, to a man and to a woman, this is what they want. They want an America that projects strength to
Not
the
an
world.
apology tour.
Not an apology tour. And that's what we had under the Obama administration. He's not doing this. And to the people who feel like we need to kowtow to Iran because, we gave them all that money and we need to kind of just lay back. No, that's not what the American people want.
Right. How are we supposed to respond to the president of Iran when he makes comments like that?
A state
Are we
sponsor
supposed to
of
just-
terror, too.
Right. Are we supposed to just sit back and take it? No.
Well, stay tuned. Let's see if
Let us know what you think.
Because it does remind a lot of people this Twitter thing of Fire and Fury, which was last year. Then we advanced to talks with North Korea. Is that what's on tap for Iran? We'll find out. All right, 6:11 now. Jillian joins us with a Fox News alert.
That's right. Good Tuesday morning. Let's get you caught up with this news that we're following. Storms pounding the East Coast turned deadly. A woman killed when wind and rain toppled a tree, sending it smashing into her home outside D.C. Near Philadelphia, downpours flooding homes and stranding drivers. The rain also causing chaos out west. Look at this in Colorado, roads turning into raging rivers. The water causing mudslides south of Denver. 3 teenagers now behind bars accused of leading a police chase that killed an officer. Kent officer Diego Moreno was hit and killed by another cop as he laid out spike strips to try and slow down a truck full of suspects in Washington state. The 16-year-old behind the wheel of that truck now charged with second-degree murder. The chase started after the teens opened fire in a parking lot. Police now identifying the suspect in the deadly Toronto shooting. Faisal Hussein accused of opening fire into restaurants and cafes, killing 2 people and injuring 13 others. His family says he struggled with psychosis and depression. Police exchanging gunfire with Hussein after the attack. He was found dead nearby shortly after. Authorities still hunting for a motive, but terrorism has not been ruled out. The first victim, now identified as 18-year-old Reese Fallon, a 10-year-old girl, was also killed. And a spaceship touching down on the White House lawn at President Trump's Made in America event.
On the South Lawn, you have the space capsule, and every part is made right here in America.
NASA hopes to use the Orion for human travel in deep space. It's being developed by Lockheed Martin, just one of the many companies from all 50 states that showcased products at the White House. We'll hear from a business owner who was part of the event coming up in the 8 o'clock hour. Send it back to you.
Well, I hope they trucked it in and didn't fly it in. You never know.
Never know.
All right. Thanks, Jillian. All right, coming up on this Tuesday, President Trump's Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh, getting one of his biggest endorsements yet. 80 of his former law students praising him in a letter to Congress. One of them is going to join us after this timeout.
Plus, this illegal immigrant escaped ICE custody at the airport moments before he was set for deportation, and now he could dodge jail time, too. We'll show you that person coming up.
Still standing better than I ever did, looking like a true survivor.
Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh, that man right there in the center, may be getting his most glowing review yet. 80 of his former Harvard Law School students praising their former professor in a letter to Congress, writing in part, quote, "We may have differing views on political issues, but we all agree on one thing. Judge Kavanaugh is a rigorous thinker, a devoted teacher, and a gracious person." Here with more is one of those 80 former students. Kirby West joins us from our nation's capital. Kirby, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Well, you know, this whole nomination thing is very political these days. A lot of people on the left are they're going to do anything they can to stop him. You pointed out during the commercial to me that of these 80 students, they're not all Republicans. They're from all sorts of political points of view, aren't they?
Yeah, really. The students on the list span the political spectrum. As you might imagine, Harvard Law School leans largely to the left, so it would be probably challenging to find that many hardcore Republicans to put on the list if you wanted to.
Sure. What is it about him that you were willing to sign your name at the bottom of that?
I think if you read anything he's written, you can tell that he's brilliant, that he's a very effective communicator. But what stands out to me as his student is that he's just remarkably kind. He takes such a personal interest in each of the students in the class, and it's a 1 month long class, and he manages to form these really strong relationships. And he took us out to dinner and offered to give us career advice and serve as a reference, and just a really really kind person.
And Kirby, he didn't just say that lip service to the class. He actually helped you, didn't he?
He did, yeah. I have reached out to him several times since graduating, and every time he's responded immediately, and he's given me career advice, and just a few months ago actually served as a reference for me for a new job.
That's really interesting. All right, so Kirby, for people who might be in Congress and they're looking in and they are opposed to him right now for political purposes for their party, what would you like to say to them about Judge Kavanaugh?
I think first I would just reiterate that he is so eminently qualified. Yale undergrad, Yale Law School, has written over 300 opinions, is just, brilliant. But I would say also consider that this is a very, very good person that you're putting through a difficult confirmation process, and to think of him and his family and, be kind to him the way that he has been to so many people. Well,
I'm sure he certainly appreciates you and all 79 of the other names who signed that letter to Congress. Kirby, thank you very much for joining us live.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Kirby West, former student. All right, coming up, the Boston bomber doesn't deserve to die, and his lawyers have 30 reasons why. You're going to want to hear why they want to spare him. And you're looking at a Democrat who wants to take on the president in 2020. Tim Ryan wants the yoga vote. Is this picture an indication of a bigger problem within the Democratic Party, or what is that about? We're going to try to tell you.
Some quick headlines now on your Tuesday morning. This violent immigrant could walk free after escaping from ICE officials at the airport. According to the New York Post, prosecutors used the wrong statute to charge the man from Senegal. The ex-con was being deported back to his native country when he escaped from officers at New York's JFK airport. He somehow slipped away but was arrested in Chicago 3 days later. And police officers and other officials in one Florida city can no longer ask about whether someone is in the country legally. The Orlando City Council approving the new policy known as the Trust Act. The city's mayor says it sends a message of inclusiveness to all those affected by the federal government's immigration policies. Now over to Ainsley.
All right. Thank you, Todd. Are Democrats going too far to the left? A new poll revealing 56% of Americans think that Democrats are out of step with American thinking. Here to debate this is RNC spokesperson Kayleigh McEnany and Fox News contributor Jessica Tarlov. Thanks so much, ladies, for being with us.
Good morning.
Good morning, Kayleigh. I'll start with you. Do you think is that poll accurate? Are Democrats out of touch?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. On every single issue, Democrats are out of touch. Think through this. On ICE, the majority of Americans say, hey, we don't want to abolish ICE. What do Democrats do? 90% of congressional Democrats vote against a resolution to praise ICE and to lift ICE up, or they vote present, same thing as voting no. The majority of Americans say, hey, we love the economy. Things are going great. What do Democrats do? Let's change the economic system to socialism. The majority of Americans want civility. What do Democrats do? Maxine Waters calls for violently pushing against Trump officials. So are they out of step? I think so.
Yeah, I mean, she brings up some good points, Jessica. I mean, abolish ICE, that's not what most Americans want if you look at the polls.
No, but that's not also what most Democrats want or what our leadership is saying. It's a few fringe people on the left. I mean, there are, at the end of the day, only 42 Democrat socialists on the ballot coming up in 2018. 42. If you look at the entire nation, how many seats are up for grabs there?
42 socialists?
Democrat socialists, yeah.
I know. That's so far.
I
was surprised there was even one a few years ago.
No, I'm not surprised by that at all. And I don't think that this is an issue. Bernie Sanders is obviously an incredibly important figure in this movement and has pushed the party to the left with Elizabeth Warren. But we're not in danger of becoming the party of Democrat socialists. There are also a number of polling numbers that are great for Democrats. We're up over 10 in the generic ballot. We're killing it on registration. 12 million more registered as Democrats than Republicans. Independents leaving Donald Trump, plus 20 want in the independent category Democrats to control Congress come November. That looks pretty good to me.
Kayleigh?
Ainsley, when you look at the Real Clear Politics average, that generic ballot gap is a lot smaller than double digits. And, you know, I hear Jessica saying 42 Democratic Socialists, which is astonishing in and of itself. But here's the thing, Ainsley. Some folks in the Democratic Party, they're not using the label Democratic Socialist. However, they are ascribing to socialist policies. You look at free college. You look at socialized medicine, single payer. You look at income, universal income. These are policies that used to be the far left fringe, but now you have Kirsten Gillibrand, Kamala Harris, all of these mainstream 2020 contenders, so-called mainstream contenders, signing on to them. So they might not be socialist in name yet, but they are socialist in action and in the policies that they support.
But if you do also look at the individual polling on those issues, take healthcare, for instance, where Democrats are doing extremely well compared to Republicans. It's plus 14 incumbent people who are running in races have an advantage when they say that they don't want to repeal Obamacare. That is a losing issue. For instance, if you look at the Kaiser polling, over 50% of Americans say that they do want single payer. That includes Republicans. President Trump even campaigned on saying, none of you will lose your health care. You'll always have somewhere to go. So if you break down the individual issues, I think that NBC Wall Street Journal poll finding that we're out of the mainstream won't bear true.
Kaylee, how do you explain the approval rating of the president? I mean, he has the highest approval ratings ever coming out of Helsinki when so many people were critical of him.
Yeah, it's a great point, Ainsley. You know, you look around, people feel the economic life going on. They feel all of this good. They see their incomes rising. They see access to the job market that wasn't there. For the first time, Americans feel like this country is heading in the right direction. So if Democrats want to go out and say, let's have socialism, let's change the economic system, it's not going to work because President Trump is winning on every single front and Americans feel it. And I think if he asked that one simple question that Ronald Reagan asked, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago, vast majority of Americans are going to say yes.
Jessica, if you look at the polls, it says, 56% of Democrats are out of step. What about Republicans? Do you think that Republicans are out of step as well?
Well, I do, but I always think that.
Why? Why?
It's just not an agenda that I feel is good for the working class, middle, and lower class Americans. I take Kaylee's point, and obviously the president's approval rating is going up. I mean, it started completely in the dumpster. But I think that what we're seeing now, if you look at the generic ballot and you look at what's going on with independents, for instance, that you're going to have he's going to be presiding over divided government come November. We need 23 seats to take control of Congress back. Politico just released a report that in 54 races where Dems are challenging incumbent Republicans, they outraised them in the second quarter. We're doing extremely well, and as is the RNC. Thank you, Kaylee, for that.
Yes, we are.
But if you look what's going on with the DCCC, for instance, the DRSC, we're doing very well on the money-raising front, and I think that November is looking good for us. So we'll see how President Trump does with a bunch of Democrats with a little bit more power.
All right, Kaylee, Jessica, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ainsley.
Thank you,
You're welcome. The media is freaking out over President Trump's plan to revoke security clearances from Obama officials.
Of an autocrat, not an American president. There's really no way to look at this other than President Trump wants to punish his critics.
This is Nixonian.
But a former FBI agent says his plan is reasonable, and he's going to join us live. Plus, this baby is just 7 months old, but her epic hair is driving the internet wild. But first, happy birthday to Jennifer Lopez, the pop star and actress, turns 49 years old today.
This is a very dangerous day for American democracy. This is the move of an autocrat, not an American president. There's really no way to look at this other than President Trump wants to punish his critics.
Well, Jake, there's no question about it. Wants to punish them and silence them as well, perhaps.
Sarah Sanders there, let's just call it what it was. She really threw a grenade in there.
We shouldn't minimize this. This is a huge deal. This is Nixonian. This is the president threatening to use his power, essentially, to punish his political enemies. There's no other way to look at it.
Well, there you've got the liberal media in a frenzy over the president's plan to perhaps yank security clearances from about half a dozen ex-Obama officials. But our next guest says this is a suitable response that could prevent them from ever working in government again.
Here with more is retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent Greg Schaefer. Greg, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me. It's good
You're
to be
welcome.
here.
Why do you think that this is something that the president can do or should do?
Well, first of all, there are three ways an individual can lose their security clearance. First, upon the determination of the issuing agency, they can revoke it. The second means is by national security interest. And the third, because the president does have final authority on all national security matters and security clearances, he can unilaterally then revoke a security clearance. However, he should be able to identify a specific offense which justifies revoking the revocation of that clearance.
Sure. And Greg, this apparently was suggested by Rand Paul a couple of days ago because Mr. Brennan referred to the president's conduct in Helsinki as treasonous. Given what you have seen, do these officials deserve to have the security clearance yanked?
Well, again, having a security clearance is not a right, it's a privilege. And in the federal government, that privilege has to be renewed every 5 years. If the president can identify, again, a specific offense why he should revoke that security clearance, by all means do it. But at the same time, you got to keep in mind that just because they have a clearance does not mean they still have access to classified material. That doesn't exist the minute they leave the building or retire.
Okay, so what does it mean when you have your clearance revoked? What could you do before? What can't you do now?
That's a good question. A security clearance really is more symbolic than it is functional. It comes into play if the individual leaves government service and wants to either get another job with government service, he has that security clearance still in place, or he wants to work for a Beltway bandit, a government contractor, then he would be at the top of the line for that position because he already has a security clearance, because one, they're expensive, and two, they take a long time to get. So it's very hard to get rich using your security clearance unless you go to work for, again, a government contractor. But again, to revoke it would be more of a slap in the face than it would be anything else.
Well, sure, and it does look like he is punishing his critics. And I know James Clapper yesterday said it was petty. We had a soundbite, Greg, with Jim Jordan, the congressman from Ohio, a little while ago, and he detailed that a number of these 6 people, when they were in office, did lie, did leak. Perhaps they should have been, they should have gone after the security clearances and fired them at that point rather than afterwards, because to some it does look petty.
That's exactly right. The water's already gone over the dam, as they say. They should have definitely looked to revoking those clearances back when there was criminal activity involved.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Of course, it's still a question whether or not the president will do it, and he's thinking
considering it.
Yep.
All right, let's hand it over to Jillian, who has some headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
That's right, and we start with the Fox News alert. So let's go ahead and get you caught up on this breaking news. At least 49 people are dead as wildfires rage in Greece. People forced to run to the sea to avoid being burned or choking on smoke as 2 fires burn out of control near Athens. Cars and nearly 100 homes are destroyed. Witnesses describe seeing explosions and burning pine cones raining from the sky. More than 700 people have been evacuated, some packing into small boats desperate to get away. 600 firefighters are working to stop those flames. The Boston Marathon bomber could avoid the death penalty if his lawyers get their way. The Boston Globe reporting that lawyers have filed a brand new motion that says they found 30 reasons why Dzhokhar Tsarnaev's 2015 death sentence should be thrown out. 3 people, including an 8-year-old boy, were killed in the April 2013 attacks. Tsarnaev was convicted for planting bombs at the finish line with the help of his brother, who was killed in a shootout with police. Dramatic video showing a couple out walking their dog getting robbed at gunpoint by a group of teenagers. The video showing the thieves approach them with guns drawn, demanding their wallets and phones. Watch as the man jumps on top of his wife with a shotgun in his face before handing over an iPhone. The suspects caught after leading police on a chase in a stolen car. And just stop what you're doing and look at your TV. Talk about hair goals. This 7-month-old baby is going viral thanks to her amazing dark brown mop. Look at that. Baby Chenka was born with a full head of hair in Japan last December. Over 70,000 people around the world are now following the adorable little girl's Instagram account, which has been labeled a hair diary. Wouldn't you just like a piece of that? Like
awesome.
A small chunk of that hair?
Look at that picture
incredible.
Right there. She is so cute.
Holy cow.
It's awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Jillian.
All right. 20 minutes before the top of the hour, let's go outside. Janice Dean, the weather machine, is reporting live from the streets of New York.
It is a sauna here in New York City. The humidity is crazy. Just watch my hair in the next 3 hours. We'll see what happens. I have some wonderful folks out here at 6:30. What's your name? Where are you from?
Barbara Matthews from Little Rock, Arkansas.
Nice. First trip to New York?
Second, but the first one was in the 80s.
Okay, you having fun so far?
Oh, great.
Party like it's 1980. All right, hello, you guys. 45 years. 45 years of what?
Wedded bliss.
Wedded bliss. What are your names?
Sue Crump and Harold.
And
Harold.
Harold, tell me what the secret is to 45 years of good marriage.
Just putting up with each other.
Oh, I love the honesty. You guys are awesome. Thanks for being on Fox and Friends. Let's take a look at the maps real quick. I will show you what the temperatures are. Here in New York City, it's 75, but man, with the humidity, it feels even warmer than that. We have a cold front that's going to move through and the potential for heavy rain all up and down the East Coast. So it's going to be hit or miss here in New York City, but parts of the Mid-Atlantic up towards the Northeast, we're concerned for flooding. So just be aware of that. Know what to do if there's a watch or a warning in your area. And of course, the other big story we're watching is the heat across the South and the Southwest, where we're going to break some records all up and down the West Coast. All right. Anybody you want to say hi to real quick at home?
Yeah, all of our kids. Stephanie and Jay Ellisted. Doug and Corey.
Oh my gosh, the whole troop. Congratulations, my friend. Congratulations. Thanks for coming. All right, back inside.
Do you think he's going to get in trouble for saying putting up with? He's 100% accurate. Yeah, I'm not questioning him.
You might get in trouble now.
See, the secret to a long and happy marriage, Todd.
Yes.
Is whatever your wife says.
Just say yes.
The answer is yes.
Oh, Steve, I'm 3 years in. I learned that lesson week 1. Next on the rundown, a popular snack now being recalled because it can make your kids sick, and I bet you have it in your cabinet right now. So good.
All right. Stick around to find out what it is. And the media slamming President Trump over his tough talk for Iran's president.
I know we ask this a lot, but this one seems like a pretty blatant distraction.
This is kind of what all of us in the media and all analysts that I've spoken to always feared would happen.
Our next guest lost his leg serving in Iraq from an Iranian bomb and says it's about time this regime gets called out. He likes the fact that the president is doing just that. Right back.
Good morning to you and welcome back. Some quick headlines. Chick-fil-A is expanding. The popular fast food giant is set to begin testing meal kits at 150 Georgia stores in August. Take a look. The kits can be purchased in store or ordered online for just under $16 and should take less than a half hour to prepare. Doesn't that look good? And if these snacks are in your pantry, they could get you sick, so toss them. Pepperidge Farms recalling 4 varieties of Goldfish crackers due to a possible salmonella risk. The company is concerned about a whey powder and a seasoning applied to these flavors. And your wine may be radioactive. I'm not kidding. French researchers warning California wine made after 2011 could have particles from the meltdown of Japan's Fukushima nuclear plant. The good news, though, the levels aren't dangerous. So cheers to you, Steve.
Let me get this straight. Both Goldfish and wine?
I know.
Holy cow, what a Tuesday. All right, thanks, Jillian. All right, President Trump getting major backlash from the media over his tough words to the Iranian president on Sunday.
It's quite a pass we've come to when the leadership of a country like Iran seems more stable and rational than the president of the United States.
It's a distraction. I know we ask this a lot, but this one seems like a pretty blatant distraction.
This is kind of what all of us in the media and all analysts that I've spoken to always feared would happen one day, that the president would be at night, up late, angry, and tweet a military threat against another country.
But isn't it about time the commander-in-chief called out Iran? After all, think about all the terrorism they support. Here to weigh in is the senior vice president of the Folds of Honor Foundation, retired Army Major Ed Polito, who lost one of his legs in Iraq from an Iranian bomb. Ed, good morning to you.
Well, what a great day to be an American, and what a great day to be on Fox and Friends. Thank you for this opportunity.
Ed, it's always a pleasure to have you. First of all, why do you know it was an Iranian bomb?
Well, the thing about it is that I was operating, of course, from 2003 to 2011, and I got hit by an improvised explosive device, a roadside bomb in the city of Bakuba, Iraq. And what we know from the individuals that were there and were taking part on these missions, that, you know what, at the end of the day, the Iranians had a big part in all of that. And I just want to let the American people know that, you know what, they have blood on their hands. There's a lot of our service members that have died on the battlefield. Some have come back like I have. And you know what? At the end of the day, President Trump's tweet was about making sure that America stands tall for not only our service members, but for the American people.
Well, you know what, Major Ed? It was the fact that the president was tweeting in all caps that got a lot of people's attention. mentioned. It's like he's going to get us into real trouble. He's going to provoke the Iranians.
Well, and you know what? At the end of the day, it's time to take a strong stand against the Iranians and hold them accountable. Not only are they a menace in Iraq, but of course in Syria and the Middle East. And if you study and you do your research, you'll understand that, you know what, they have been sponsoring terrorism for years. And of course, this agreement with the nuclear agreement that was put in place by the previous administration and the $1.7 billion that went into the hands of the Iranians, that, you know what, we have to make sure that we're finally leading with strength and that we're holding them accountable for their actions. And so for us, we have no issues with the Iranian people. Our issue is making sure that this regime is basically put on notice that, you know what, President Trump doesn't play around when it comes to foreign policy.
Ed, at the beginning of this interview, you talked about how you were positive that it was an Iranian bomb. That's the reason you lost your leg. For the President of the United States to now go after them, forget about pulling out of the Iran deal. It's all part of what he's doing. He's clamping down. The rial has lost half of its value in the last couple of months over there. But to know that the President is going after the country that cost you your leg, what do you think about that?
Well, the way I look at it is that I think President Trump, again, has taken a stand against the Iran regime. He's calling them out. And the thing about it is that, you know what, they are in trouble right now. And I think for us, it's time to basically come to the table. And you know what, I've always talked about peace, but I never want war. But you know what, every option is on the table. And when you call out America, it's about time that we have a president that's going to stand up for us and for this nation and what we stand for. And I think that's what I see in this part of what is going on, and I stand with the president, and the media can say whatever they want, but at the end of the day, you know what? We in mainstream America understand that we must support this president and stand with him and make sure that, you know what, Iran knows that we're not going to play around as it pertains to this issue.
All right. Always a pleasure to have you on, Major Ed Polito, joining us today from Oklahoma City. Ed, once again, thank you for your service.
Thank you. Hoorah!
There you go. I love that guy. All right. What do you think about that? Email us, friends@foxnews.com. Meanwhile, straight ahead, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo defying President Trump, pardoning 7 illegals so they could not be deported. And then what he said went one step further, we're going to tell you. Plus, what happens when a conservative goes to a Democratic Socialist rally? Well, you're going to be surprised.
She's being dubbed the new darling of the progressive left. New York congressional candidate Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez getting national attention as she hits the campaign trail for fellow Democrats.
Well, our next guest is a conservative, and she went to one of her rallies. Daily Caller's Virginia Kruta, thank you so much for being with us. And you wrote an op-ed about it. Tell us why you went to her rally. What was the interest?
Thanks for having me. Well, I went kind of to see what the fuss was about, really, because, I mean, I've been to conservative rallies before. I've been to a Trump speech. I've been to a Ted Cruz rally when he was running for president. And I just kind of wanted to see, you know, why the message was resonating, because really the socialist message is gaining steam within the Democrat Party.
So based upon what you saw, why are people drawn to this message?
Well, I was listening to them talk, to Ocasio-Cortez and also to Cori Bush, who she was stumping for in St. Louis. And they say things, I mean, they talk about things that everybody wants, especially like if you're a parent. They talk about education for your kids, health care for your kids, the things that you want. And, you know, if you're not really paying attention to how they're going to pay for it or, you know, the rest of that, it's easy to fall into that trap and say, my kids deserve this. And, you know, well, maybe the government should be responsible for helping me with that.
Mm-hmm. Virginia, as a conservative, when you're sitting in that audience or standing in that audience and you're listening to that message, how did it make you feel? Were you angry? Were you more drawn to that?
I was mostly uncomfortable because I was surrounded by a group of people who were talking about how they had gotten involved because they were tired of being angry all the time. And it seems like so much effort to be angry about everything instead of to focus on what you could do to change it. So it was really uncomfortable. Also, because I'm from a military family, I'm third generation Army myself, and I'm standing there and I'm listening to one of the speakers cheer Assata Shakur, the convicted cop killer. And so, and I'm watching Ocasio-Cortez and Cori Bush. Both of them are just kind of nodding along, like this is okay. So it was uncomfortable is the best word for the entire event.
It's certainly going to be interesting to see how this socialist agenda plays in the Midwest. Virginia, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Virginia.
Thanks
More
for having
Fox
me.
and Friends coming up.